and probably expensive blazer, do you get? And down to his fingernails, they're very well trimmed and all that, so it gives a sense of sophistication and luxury. It's as simple as that. This picture alone makes you fall in love with the pen, and you want to be like, I can remember when I bought my first fountain pen, it was from a picture like this that I saw it. And also the handwriting plays a very big role, because it was the handwriting that made me buy my first fountain pen. I thought, give you that knowledge of cursive. Bro, more than one day, I never had to sabi use the pen. It was crazy. It goes as deep as that. I mean, photography is the basis of marketing. James, please, let's see the next one. Skip to that. The next one, James. No, the next one.
After this one?
Yeah, after this one. Yes, this one. This is my favorite picture right now. So a food photography picture like this, I mean, it's... What else do you want to hear before you buy this food? Is there anything else you'd like to hear before you're convinced to buy this food? It's as simple as that. Tell me a story. The food is beautiful, it's crunchy, it's tasty, and all that. It makes you hungry. And you buy it. It's as simple as that.
I don't know if it is tasty.
You don't know if it's tasty. Have you? Did you know if KFC food was tasty before you bought it?
Yeah, I don't know how from someone that's KFC.
Really? This guy. James, please, let's skip to the next one. The next. Say that thing you said again.
No, it looks good, but I don't know. I still don't know if it's tasty. Taste is different.
Before now. Understanding photography practically. And I said it where I said it. I'll just run through it. James, please, can we see the next picture? This one. Thank you. So, this triangle, exposure triangle, it's the basis of photography. It's as simple as that. This is the basis of photography. If you can balance this, then you always get a good picture. If you can balance this. And there is something that these three work with. We'll see it in the next picture probably. Or can anybody tell us what's in the middle of all this? You said like, this guy. Let's assume you're holding your camera in your hands and you set your shutter speed at 1 second. That time, you think 1 second is fast, but 1 second is actually very slow. In photography sense, it's very slow because before your shutter will click 1 second, there's no how your hand will shake. Somehow, your hand will shake. And when your hand shakes, it means your picture will shake. So you have to keep your shutter speed fast enough, which means your picture will get darker. You don't have a choice. But at the same, James, please, can you go back? The picture gets darker. But we can also support that picture by adding more lights from either of these two guys. Let's see what aperture does. Aperture is quite special because it's not controlled by the camera. It's controlled by the lens instead. Your aperture is dependent on the kind of lens you're using. And aperture is interesting because it controls the depth of field, it controls the area of focus and all of that stuff. Now, before we come back to aperture, let's talk about depth of field. let's take for instance, I want to take a picture of this bottle. Or James, please, can you next, 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 next. Is that all? That's not it now. That's all. That's all. I did not prepare a slide, I just put reference images together. Anyways, let's just carry on, don't worry about it. So, depth of field. If your aperture is, please can you take us to the aperture reference image, please? Yes. So, the lower, let's look at this properly. It starts from here, from basic science, it starts from here, the aperture, and the lower this number is, the wider the mouth of your lenses. If, do we have a camera? Thank you, let me just borrow this for a sec. Sorry. I don't know how closely we can see this. If you notice, the opening is very small. The opening is very small. It means the aperture of this camera right now is high. It's somewhere around 22, 16 or more, so it's around here. Now, the reason why the aperture is that high is because the photographer wanted a lot of people to be in focus. So the higher it is, the more people it will have in focus. If he raises the aperture now to, or if he reduces it rather to somewhere around here, then more light will enter the camera, but it will not be able to have so many people in focus. Aside probably one person, every other person behind is going to be blurred out. Do you get? And that's the problem with aperture. It gives you light, quite all right. The light that your shutter speed has taken away from you, but it's going to blur out every other thing aside one person. At times, even the one person will be a bit blurry. Do you get? So the higher this number, the darker the picture gets and the more people you have in focus. So the last thing on the exposure triangle is your ISO. James. ISO. Next. Yes. Now to get more information about ISO, remember what we said about shutter speed, that the faster it is, the less light it will take into the camera. The camera actually has light. It doesn't use all of that light, and the ISO uses that light that the camera has somewhere in it. So what the ISO does is it multiplies that light, so you can have your shutter speed to be fast enough so that you can get probably a running object. I had all those reference images in that slide. So if your shutter speed is fast enough, or let's take for instance, you have somebody running and you want to take pictures of that person. If your shutter speed is not fast enough, you see a kind of motion in the picture, like you will not see the leg. You see a kind of blur there. So you have to make your shutter speed fast enough so that it catches that movement. But when it catches the movement, it's going to be dark. Now you can't really play with your aperture in that sense, because since it's already dark, if you increase your aperture, then it's not going to have the depth of field it's supposed to have. Depth of field is simply how the camera has a way of making your background look deep. So I can take a picture of this bottle water here now, and it blurs out this guy. So you don't see that guy in the picture, it makes it a bit deep. But if the aperture is high, then this guy will show, and every other thing in it. Do you get? So the ISO finds a way to multiply the light that the shutter speed have taken away and the aperture have taken away. But ISO has a problem, because when you increase it too much, it multiplies the light too much. And when it has exhausted all the light that the camera naturally has in it, it starts to bleach the pixels in the picture. So you have a dark spot here now. It will bleach it and turn it white. But the picture will not interpret as a white spot. Instead, it will interpret as green, because pixels are quite tiny. So it bleaches the pixels one after the other. So you start seeing like sandy thing in the picture, like a noise, a kind of noisy thing in the picture. And depending on what you are trying to get, it's not really a good thing. And again, make no mistakes. There's some kind of images that you would want that noise in it. There's some kind, in fact, every, in quotes, bad thing that each of the figures on that exposure triangle gives you is good in a way, depending on what the kind of picture you're trying to get. Do you get? And now, let's take, for instance, provided you have set all three figures of your exposure triangle right, and your picture still happens to be dark somehow. The picture is sharp enough, it's getting the right motion and all of that stuff, but it still happens to be dark. What do you do in that sense? I'm not talking to you, young man. Thank you. Can we have another answer? Let's have another answer. You've adjusted your shutter speed to catch the right motion. You've adjusted your aperture to accommodate the perfect depth of field. And you've adjusted your ISO to be perfect enough to not include any grains in your picture. But somehow the picture is still not bright enough. What do you do? You said it first, but it's correct anyways. That's what you do, you add extra lights. Now you can add extra lights by... Theophilus was taking pictures, and he had his speed lights on. So that is like the first thing. That's the basic of extra lights, speed lights on your camera. Now the usage of speed lights is very simple. It's quite simple actually. You can either just bounce your light up on the roof, provided you are in a room like this and the ceiling is a white surface. You can just bounce your lights up there, and it gives a kind of ambience feel. Do you get? So it spreads the light everywhere and gives it that feel of it's a natural light, like it's the natural. Prolific, can you hear me? Just take any picture. Just take a picture. Yes, take a picture. With your speed light. Take a picture of me now. I'll be fine. Have fun. So, just like that, if you notice where his speed light is, the speed light is facing up because he wants the field to be as natural as possible. He wants the light to spread ambiently. Or he can as well turn that light now towards me, and it gives a harsh result, like the image is going to have harsh lights in it to show that the light was pointed towards me and whatnot. But besides your speed lights, there are also other things that, studio lights, but studio lights will be taken like much later down this class. Pretty fucked up my slide, look here, but okay. So, the speed light, it's can simply be used, pointed in different directions to give you different results and all of that stuff. It's very simple to use actually, and it's the most portable kind of light you can ever come across. But there is studio light, something like that. And that studio light now, most of the time you can't really use that light. You can't really use that light in certain settings you can't use that light. You have to, if you must use it, you have to use them with modifiers. These things are best learned with practical. Now for modifiers we have softboxes, we have cones, we have grid, and I need my fucking slide, I swear to you. The thing is, so in a nutshell, yeah, when you have exhausted all parts of all three figures of your exposure triangle, you introduce extra lights, be it speed lights or studio lights, something that can suffice for the natural lights that you have lost. Do we have any questions? What if there is no light? What do you mean by what if there is no light? Because you can either have natural light in a setting, or your speed lights as prolific used, or a studio light like that.
I'm saying you're outside.
You're outside.
And maybe it has gotten dark and you didn't come on the lights. So at that point, can you visualize?
You're screwed. You're screwed. It's as simple as that. But you can also pump your ISO. Your ISO can accommodate all of that stuff to an extent. Now, there are cameras that have high dynamic range. High dynamic range is simply when you take a picture in a place that the light source is not so good. When editing, you can always pump the exposure and all of that stuff, and it still gives you a kind of good result. But for cameras that don't have that high dynamic range, once you pump the exposure too much, then your picture comes out to be very noisy, and again you are screwed. Any other question? No other question? In the absence of questions.
Thank you. And what do we say to kind man, sir?
We love you, sir.
I don't gang up. Thank you very much. Round of applause for Mr. Emmanuel. Okay. Drink the water, make it digest. How was it?
Are you scared to touch me?
Rookie? Rookie. Oh, Rookie baby. Rookie baby, how was it? Nice. Wow. How was it?
Thank you.
Very well. Wednesday morning. Hey. Wednesday morning. It's going to be what? Hot. It's going to be hot like fire. Okay. So great. You guys are learning, and we are down. Yeah. Try it. Right? Okay, guys. So, this time about to bring up my own personal feedback. Very stubborn. very, very much, very creative, very proud because it's Ali guy. What's there again? Very humble. I can also be proud and humble. I think life is easy for me. Anyways, I want the mic so I can. Hello? We're there.
Okay.